My name's Ili Baré. I'm the director of a feature documentary called The Leadership. It is about a group of 76 women with a STEM background who went on an extraordinary expedition to Antarctica. They went there to learn about leadership, and there are a lot of kind of journeys about leadership that happen along the way. Well, it started because the producer of the documentary, Greer Simkin, came to me and told me about this extraordinary experiment that was to take 76 women to Antarctica and teach them about leadership. And I thought it sounded like an amazing idea, and I was immediately intrigued to see how it would all go.
Interesting, because it was a 2016 expedition as well, wasn't it? So it's quite a long time, I guess, you've been involved with it. It's exciting now to see it, finally coming to the screen after all these years.
Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty. It's been a very long process, but I think in some ways it needed to be that long, because part of the idea of the film is that we're on a ship for 21 days in Antarctica, but the aim of the journey, I guess, is to affect change not only in these women's individual lives but in the world. And so, in order to be able to see what the tale of the experiment actually is, you kind of need that time to truly have a longitudinal story.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's quite interesting, I think, how the documentary certainly takes some twists and turns and has some surprises along the way. When you got involved, how did it change from when you got involved and what you're expecting to capture and expecting to get out of it versus, after those 21 days on the ship, what you actually captured?
Well, I knew that getting onto the ship, that all of these women would have really significant reasons for wanting to leave home for a month and invest in kind of, I guess, career development. They had all kind of experienced a variety of obstacles in their workplaces, from sexual harassment to kind of like facing a maternal wall to pay discrepancies, a whole lot of things that are not just particular to women in STEM. So I knew that we would be telling stories that kind of gave a personal face to the statistics about career drop-off for women in STEM. But what I didn't know was how the actual dynamics of the journey would unfold. And that kind of is the beauty of being a documentary maker. It's also the kind of hard thing as well, is that you kind of like the story unfolds in front of you, and it's up to you to kind of capture that authentically.
In terms of anything that sort of shocked or surprised you coming out of that, either on the trip itself or years down the track when you revisit where these people are?
I think one of the things that surprised me was that even though a lot of women were on board because they'd experienced these difficulties, I think it surprised me how much many of them had kind of internalized those difficulties. Like they'd kind of gone, it must be because of me that I'm not able to, like, that I'm finding it really hard to stay in my job, or that I'm, not advancing, or that, and so, I think I found that to me was surprising, was how, the fact that because many of them were the only women in their field or in their department or whatever, that they hadn't really been encouraged to see the obstacles that they were facing as part of it through a gender lens, if you like. They were seeing it kind of through a very personal lens. So that surprised me. And there was some other kind of, darker surprises as well that I don't, that are kind of in the film that I probably wouldn't want to give away at this point.
No, absolutely. Shocking one, really, particularly if you, I guess, so far removed from the broader public media scrutiny of the time.
Yeah.
But also, I think the documentary does a really good job of showing how that's subsequently been incorporated into Homeward Bound and improved the program. What do you want people to take away from the documentary?
Well, I think I want people to kind of, one thing that we're definitely finding with audiences is that they definitely have a lot of conversations afterwards. So we're hoping that this kind of contributes to broader conversations about gender and diversity and inclusion beyond gender as well. That extends to race as well. We're really hoping that this film is a part of a conversation that kind of means that we can have more diverse leadership in every sphere, not just in STEM.
And it's been a pretty successful documentary so far. I mean, it's, Sydney, Melbourne, Edinburgh Film Festival as well. What's next for you?
Well, at the moment, I'm working on developing a few other kind of projects that I've got in the pipeline, but we're just waiting to see whether the green light is going to be lit. It's been a really unusual and kind of challenging time in COVID, in terms of kind of production but I think documentary in some ways it's a really interesting time because it means that, I've worked on a couple of things where normally you might have one crew who's traveling, doing a lot of travel, and they might travel internationally or definitely interstate to make sure that they can kind of, get that kind of consistency and mean that they've got that real relationships with participants. But now increasingly what's happening at the moment is that you're kind of directing remotely, or I might be doing interviews for a director who's in WA and I'm in New South Wales, and in a way that's certainly a more environmentally friendly way of filming, but it's also kind of more collaborative and it's really interesting. So I'm kind of embracing that too.
We know that the evolution of our planet is in the hands of scientists, physicists, cosmologists, biologists. And yet in that environment, women are completely absent.
Working in Washington, D.C., less than 20% of members of Congress are women. What we do in Washington, D.C. will impact the rest of the world.
Women are in low-level positions in research institutions.
My first chemistry class with 2,000 people, there were 10 women. I was convinced that I'd never be able to do it.
I'm a parasitologist.
She's a specialist amongst the best 10 people in the world.
I've never asked for a raise. You're lucky to get what you're given.
In China, there is a saying the female PhD is the third gender. So there's woman, man, and the female PhD.
Both times I took maternity leave, those jobs ended. I think I've given science a go, but if science doesn't want me, maybe that's it.
I've spent 30 years obsessed with studying every day of my life on leadership. What would be different in our world if women were at the leadership table in equal measure? One night, I dreamt of taking a big group of women in science for 20 days on a ship to Antarctica.
Antarctica is such a symbol of what's happening on the planet.
The most sustainable proposition we have is women at the leadership table.
Phoebe's leadership style is inspirational.
All of you are going to feel uncomfortable at some stage.
She can be a bit cavalier.
I don't personally like the way that this conversation is going.
Anyone else got something you want to share?
I'm so frustrated.
You should not fit yourself into the current leadership model. You have to change the current leadership model.
It's not up to the women to fix it all. It is a systemic problem.
I found today really tough.
But you're not on a training program, folks. You're on a leadership initiative.
Everybody has a plan till you get punched in the face, and we got punched in the face.
Even though we were on the ship and it was all about supporting each other.
I never told anyone.
Even in that environment, this can still happen.
Pretty disappointed.
As scientists, we work on facts and we need solutions.
Every single woman has these stories.
Leadership is easy when things are good. The ultimate test is, can you do it effectively when things aren't good?
Enough is enough. We shouldn't have to fit into a socio-norm that forces you to sacrifice your true self.
Makes you think, oh yeah, I could do that too.
And that's when I think I'm a leader.